Hello everyone, tonight we are crawling through the scorched ribs of a volcano, the sky so choked with ash it looks like night has fallen at midday. The air tastes like burned coins. Beneath our feet the ground pulses with hidden heat, and somewhere nearby something very large is chewing very loudly on a steaming clump of ferns that somehow grows in this inferno. You've probably never met a dinosaur with calloused toes, soot-coated feathers, and a habit of sleeping next to boiling water, but tonight, you will. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to see who's the latest night owl. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You're clinging to the edge of an ancient lava shelf. Your breath slow and shallow because everything around you is dangerously alive. Lava doesn't just flow, it groans, it spits it, throws tantrums, and glows like a wounded god. Steam hisses from cracks in the rocks. The shadows twitch with heat shimmers, and there walking along the edge of a half-frozen flow is a dinosaur that shouldn't exist. It's not big about the size of a moose, if the moose had armored eyelids and nostrils perched high up near the eyes, like a submarine's periscope. The creature's skin is dark gray with patches of cracked red, as if it had been carved from magma and left to cool in the wind. You watch as it lowers its massive, blunt-snouted head and pulls up a patch of moss with a strange crunching sound. Yes, moss, in a volcano. Because weirdly, life is stubborn. It doesn't seem to notice you. Or maybe it just doesn't care. Volcanic dinosaurs have better things to worry about than whatever you are. It steps forward with slow confidence, its wide feet splayed like oven mitts, toes covered in thick, leathery scales that must feel lava the way we feel a heated floor tile, unpleasant but survivable. Some paleontologists have quietly speculated that a now-extinct group of herbivorous dinosaurs, possibly related to ankylosaurs, had evolved to tolerate extreme thermal conditions. The idea never made it into textbooks, probably because it sounds ridiculous. Or maybe because nobody wanted to be the first to say, what if they lived in the volcano? Yet here you are. Beneath a bulging lip of Bowit, the dinosaur disappears into a cleft in the rock. You shuffle after it, ducking under steam-veiled arches and tiptoeing along jagged ridges. The walls glow faintly. The temperature rises and so does the humidity. You start to sweat in places you didn't know had pores. Then you hear something, not the groan of molten stone, not the hiss of sulfur. It's a low, slow belch. Not threatening, more like the sound a bored dog might make after dinner. And then the soft plop of another dinosaur settling down beside a glowing pool of red-lit water. They're everywhere, half a dozen of them different sizes. One is missing part of its tail, another has cracked horns and a strip of moss growing down its side like a weird fashion choice. They aren't moving much, one just blinks very slowly and continues chewing. There's an unspoken rule down here, don't waste energy. If something's on fire, let it be. They don't roar, they don't stomp. They just exist, quietly. As if this infernal ecosystem is perfectly normal. And to them it is. Fun side note, a bizarre species of extremophile bacteria called Thermus aquaticus can survive in boiling geysers. Scientists still debate whether ancient fungi or moss-like plants may have been early colonizers of volcanic terrain during the Mesozoic. Basically, it's possible that the dinosaurs weren't insane, they were just early adopters. As you ease into a low seat of rock beside them. Careful, it's hot. You can feel a rhythm beneath you. It's not a heartbeat. It's the volcano itself, a slow, deep breath every few minutes. The air changes when it exhales. Metallic, sweet almost, toxic definitely. You blink. The largest dinosaur stands up and walks toward what looks like a wall of thick smoke. Without hesitation, it steps through it and vanishes. You follow and discover a steep descent, a tunnel almost too narrow to walk through upright. Your breath fogs. There's a glowing vein of something orange running along the ceiling like a frozen river of fire. The walls feel soft in places like clay, baking from within. Still, this isn't a death trap, it's a home. You pass shallow hollows lined with heat-scorched moss, some of them containing cracked bits of shell, fossilized eggs, or maybe just leftovers from a recent hatching. No smell, no signs of rot. The heat sterilizes everything. There's no room for bacteria down here. And maybe that's the secret. Nothing competes with these dinosaurs. Nothing dares to. You're sweating bullets, but you keep going. At the bottom of the tunnel, the floor evens out. In front of you, a grove, yes, a grove of gnarled ferns sprouting from cracks in the rock. Their tips curl upward, coated with dew that somehow hasn't evaporated. The air smells sharp, like iron and burnt cinnamon. And in the middle of that grove, sleeping so peacefully, it might be dead, lies another dinosaur. This one's tiny juvenile, probably. It twitches once, lets out a sigh that sounds like a kettle starting to boil and settles again. You're not sure whether to feel terrified or touched. Then something behind you coughs. You turn. The big one is back, and it's looking right at you. For a second, you freeze. Then it snorts a puff of steam and turns around again, ambling away. You exhale. Maybe it's used to weird guests, or maybe you've just been accepted as one more warm rock in its world. Whatever the reason, you're still alive. For now. You wake, if it can be called waking, to the heavy silence of a volcanic morning. Light doesn't spill into this place. It seeps. The air is thick with a golden glow diffused through ash, and it's always hard to tell whether the day is beginning or just reluctantly continuing. Time down here is kind of a joke. The grove behind you steams gently in the radiant warmth of its cracked earth floor. Faint trickles of moisture roll down the rocks, feeding the roots of ferns that shouldn't be here, shouldn't exist at all. Their stalks are stiff, resilient, tipped in leaves that shimmer slightly with something between wax and ash. They don't wither. They just look seasoned. The dinosaurs are already awake, or maybe they never truly sleep. You see one plodding across a ledge just above a curtain of white vapor. Another crouches beside a pool so still it reflects the boiling sky above like a mirror on fire. You walk forward into what feels like the volcano's private garden. Here, lava tunnels crisscross below the surface, shaping narrow corridors and pockets of trapped humidity. And yet, somehow it's bursting with plant life. Moss mats hang from walls like prehistoric tapestries. Slime molds ripple underfoot. Small purple-green stalks, some sort of ancient horsetail, poke up between slabs of basalt, waving slightly as if greeting you. You're not sure whether to wave back. Scientists today still argue over how such ecosystems might have functioned. Some suggest geothermal energy acted like sunlight in these dark places, feeding chemosynthetic microbes that in turn supported a primitive food web. Others believe the whole idea is fiction, a biological fairy tale. But here it is, and you're walking through it in boots that are way too warm for this climate. You duck under a low arch of stone, nearly losing your balance on a patch of algae that squelches when you step on it. The dinosaur ahead of you doesn't slip. It's a smaller one this time, maybe adolescent, maybe just short. Its tail sways lazily like it's conducting an orchestra of molten noise. Its hide is covered in splotches of black and amber. Not decorative, just the result of too many years rubbing up against volcanic stone and lying in ash baths. Still, the pattern has a weird kind of style. If dinosaurs had fashion, this one would be a minimalist. As you follow it deeper into the tunnel system, the air changes. Now it's wetter, warmer, and filled with the low gurgle of an underground stream. You hear it. Before you see it, then suddenly there it is, cutting across the path like a silver serpent. You pause. The dinosaur doesn't. It wades into the shallow water, barely a foot deep, but bubbling at the surface. The stream is hot. Not boiling, but definitely not spa-friendly. And yet the creature seems to love it. It splashes deliberately, even sits for a moment, letting its rear end soak like it's in the world's worst jacuzzi. You wonder if this is some kind of ancient hygiene, or maybe just a temperature check. Interestingly, fossilized mud pits found near ancient volcanic regions often contain impressions of dinosaur footprints perfectly preserved in hardened silt. Some of these locations suggest that dinosaurs may have used hot springs as part of their daily routines. Historians still debate whether this was intentional bathing or just a happy coincidence of living near geothermal features. You step around the edge of the stream, careful not to burn your boots. The rocks here are slick and dark, polished by countless claws and tails. You follow the dinosaur into another wide chamber, this one dimly lit from above by a hole in the ceiling, a skylight punched open by ancient fury. Sunlight pours in like it's been filtered through blood and smoke. Ferns crowd the edges, greedy for even this weak light. Butterflies, or what passes for them in this age, drift lazily in the warm updrafts. They're not bright. They're brown and soot-colored, little scraps of moving shadow. One lands on your shoulder. You don't breathe until it flutters away again. To your left, a shallow basin has filled with thick gray ash. The dinosaur trudges into it and rolls slowly to one side, coating itself from snout to tail in fine powder. You think it looks absurd. Then you see another dinosaur join it. And another. Apparently, this is a group activity. Volcanic ash, oddly enough, can act like a natural pest repellent. Birds today take dust baths for similar reasons to dislodge parasites and oils. It's not hard to imagine that dinosaurs figured this out too. That, or they just liked the scratchy feeling. Hard to say. One of them sneezes. It's not cute. It sounds like a cannon going off in a cave. You jump. The others don't even look up. This place runs on a different rhythm. Eventually they rise, shaking off the loose ash in slow-motion clouds that swirl and mix with the ambient steam. Then they trot off, yes, trot, toward another corridor. Apparently it's breakfast time, again. You follow partly because you're curious, mostly because getting left behind in a volcano seems like a terrible way to go. They lead you into a new area where the temperature drops slightly and the air tastes more like moss than sulfur. And there it is, a pocket garden fed by a drip, drip, drip of condensed vapor from the ceiling. Strange vines trail from the walls. Ground-covering plants with broad, rubbery leaves coat the floor. It's cooler here, greener. You feel your lungs stretch out like they're finally allowed to breathe again. And in the middle of it all, the dinosaurs feed snapping branches, chewing soft bark, pulling entire vines down with theatrical head jerks. One glances at you, just a flick of the eye. Then it continues munching like you're just a weird, upright lizard that wandered into its brunch spot. So you sit, and you watch, and you wonder, who else knows about this place? Maybe no one. Maybe these tunnels, this floor, this entire ecosystem have been growing, rotting, blooming again in secret for longer than we've existed. Maybe the dinosaurs knew what they were doing all along. Or maybe they were just lucky enough to find the one place too hot for the world to notice. You wake up for real this time, sore, sweat-soaked, and with a patch of moss stuck to your cheek. Somewhere above the volcano grumbles like a stomach in a bad mood. The air's heavier today, like the mountains thinking too loudly. You stretch, wipe your face, and spot one of the dinosaurs stomping past you with the same lazy indifference it had yesterday. But this one's different. Its legs look shorter than the others. Not stunted, just built for balance. And its feet, oh, those feet. They're wide, paddle-shaped, with thick, cracked padding that oozes heat. Every time it steps, steam hisses up around its toes. You half expect it to sink into the rock. Its gait is awkward at first, until you realize something weird. It's not just walking, it's surfing. Not on water, obviously, but on heat. See, most creatures avoid hot surfaces. This one seeks them out. It follows the scorched paths where magma recently cooled, stepping with precision. It's like watching a professional chef dance across a sizzling skillet, calm as you please. The skin on its legs and feet is darker than the rest, almost blackened. You'd assume burns, but no. It's a different texture. hardened, layered like old bark. And when it steps into a shallow puddle left by a steam vent, you hear the water crackle. This dinosaur has fireproof feet. Some researchers have proposed the idea that dermal adaptations in certain reptiles might have allowed for thermal tolerance in volcanic environments. Crocodilian scales, for instance, can resist brief exposure to hot surfaces. But here, you're looking at a full-blown evolution of that idea, a walking furnace filter with a tail. As it chews lazily on a stalk of something green and stringy, you crouch nearby sketching its profile in your notebook. It turns slightly, snorts, and then, out of nowhere, scratches its head with one of its feet. Steam rises from the contact. You mutter to yourself, "Okay, that's new." What's not new? The smell. You're starting to recognize the scent that clings to everything in here. Part ashtray, part boiled kale, part singed hair. It's awful. But like all bad smells, your brain slowly decides to stop caring. It files it under default background noise, and you carry on. The dinosaur moves again, lumbers toward a wide slab of stone, and rubs its side against it. You hear a grinding sound, stone against stone. It's scratching itself, which is when you notice something fascinating. Under its scaly, soot-dusted skin, there are ridges, thickened pads not unlike those found on a modern elephant feet. These pads flex slightly when pressed, absorbing the surface heat and dispersing it outward like a radiator. You're not a paleontologist, but even you can recognize what that means. These creatures aren't just resistant to heat, they're using it. Heat isn't a threat to them. It's part of their daily rhythm. They warm themselves on basalt ridges. They lie in ash to soothe their joints. They submerge their feet in hot pools not to clean them, but to re-energize. It's like their bodies expect pain, and when it doesn't come, they seem restless. Somewhere in the chamber, you hear a soft plop. You turn. A juvenile has just flopped down into a shallow, vent-fed puddle, sighing with the delight of someone finding the exact right bath temperature. If dinosaurs could speak, this one would be saying, "Ah." You watch its feet. Even the young ones have thick toes wider than they need to be for walking, built like mitts, designed for pressing down for heat absorption for insulation from pain. The thing is, most animals avoid geothermal zones. Too risky. But this species has clearly adapted, no specialized for life among eruptions. And here's the wild part. It's not just surviving, it's thriving. Some scientists believe that a few herbivorous dinosaurs developed thermoregulatory behaviors using sun-baked rock surfaces to control body heat. Historians still debate whether volcanic terrains were part of that strategy or simply too extreme to support any megafauna. You glance down at the sketch in your notebook. The profile of the fireproof-footed dinosaur, now surrounded by notes, obsidian skin thermal ridges, prefers active vents. Then you hear something like a sneeze and a belch had a very ugly baby. You look up. The dinosaur has found something. A plant? No, something better. It's chewing on the bark of a bush that's managed to grow between two steaming cracks in the rock. The leaves are tiny, curled, like they've just finished baking. But the dinosaur's into it. It chomps methodically, tail swaying slightly, eyes half-lidded in bliss. You take a few cautious steps closer and notice a weird shimmer near the bush, air warping with heat. You can't get much nearer without turning your eyebrows to crisps. So you stay where you are and watch. Then something truly strange happens. The dinosaur raises one foot and places it deliberately, very deliberately, into a small depression in the stone. It holds the pose for a moment. Then the other foot, it balances there motionless. Steam curls around its legs. Its eyes close. It's meditating. You have no better explanation. It stays like that for nearly a minute. Then without fanfare, it steps away, finds another vent, and lies down. You blink. What just happened? Possibly some kind of heat-based communication. Or maybe it's personal. Like when humans zone out in a hot shower. But the precision of that action, the calm, The repetition. That's learned behavior. You jot that down too. Heat mapping ritual. Thermal grounding. Spiritual foot sauna. After a while, the group begins to move slowly, funneling back through a different corridor deeper into the lava tunnels. The fireproof-footed one lingers for a second, gives you a long sideways look, and then plods after the rest. You hesitate. Then, with slightly singed shoes and a heart now beating to the rhythm of molten stone, you follow. Because let's be honest, you came here to see dinosaurs. But you're staying to see what happens when they start using volcanoes like playgrounds. You're starting to think the dinosaurs have a better skincare routine than you do. Ash is everywhere down here, and yet these creatures wear it like a luxury wrap, coating their hides in the soft gray powder, with the casual grace of someone applying sunscreen before a beach nap. You blink the grit out of your eyes as you watch two adults take turns flopping into a shallow basin of volcanic dust, then rubbing their massive flanks along the warm rock like itchy house cats. There's no urgency, no hurry. This is Self-Care Jurassic Edition. The dinosaur closest to you exhales a long, bored breath, and with it comes a cloud of steam that makes the surrounding mist shimmer. Then, just as casually, it lumbers to the edge of a nearby spring, a pool no deeper than a baby's bath but ringed with crusty orange deposits like rusted coral. The water bubbles softly. Not quite boiling, but not exactly refreshing either. You're sweating in places no one should ever sweat. Meanwhile, the dinosaur steps in like it's slipping into a luxury spa. Its eyes droop. It lets out a contented hum that sounds suspiciously like an off-key tuba. Modern researchers still wrestle with how dinosaurs regulated their body temperature. Gigantothermy is one theory, the idea that larger animals retain heat better due to sheer size. But historians still debate whether certain dinosaurs had additional behavioral habits for managing heat. You're witnessing what feels like Exhibit A. The rest of the herd trickles in, some lining up at the ash bath, others edging into different mineral pools. The steam rising from the spring smells faintly metallic and bitter, like someone burned pennies in a kettle. You wrinkle your nose and crouch behind a jagged outcrop as one of the younger dinosaurs stumbles in your direction, seemingly drunk on the heat. Its skin glistens. Not wet, slick, like the sweat you get after too long in a sauna. It flops onto its side in a spot where the rock pulses faintly with warmth and sprawls like it's waiting for someone to bring it a drink with a tiny fern umbrella in it. You inch closer, intrigued. This is no random lava pit. The whole area feels designed, naturally of course, but still like the mountain shaped this space on purpose. Heat channels in the floor direct warmth evenly. There's a central basin. Smaller grooves lead runoff away. The stone is smooth where the dinosaurs walk, most often scored only by tail swipes and foot traffic. A steam geyser hisses in the corner, timed like it's on a resort schedule. You're not kidding yourself anymore, this is their resort. And while it's tempting to just gawk at dinosaurs soaking in natural jacuzzis, you notice something else. A rhythm. A pattern. Each dinosaur has a routine. Ash bath first. Then a drink from a pool, yes, but only the slightly cooler one near the blue-green stones. After that, they shift to the steamier pool where they soak. Some stay longer, some leave after a few minutes to go nap in the moss-shadowed alcoves where warm vapor curls around their legs. It's like watching retirees shuffle between yoga class and their favorite coffee shop. You sit down, careful to avoid a glowing crack that looks suspiciously like it might open into the underworld. You pull out your notes and scribble, structured thermal ritual. Dinosaurs equals salmias. Otsui hours heat connoisseurs. You also sketch the spring oval-shaped, ringed with mineral terraces. Small lizards dart across the edge, black as charcoal with electric blue stripes. One skitters over your boot and pauses on a nearby rock, puffing its throat like it's trying to one-up the dinosaurs. Bold move, tiny guy. A soft thump draws your attention. A juvenile has found a new patch of loose ash and is belly flopping into it repeatedly. You raise an eyebrow. It's clearly having fun. Fun in a volcano. You watch for a while, realizing this isn't a frantic survival zone. It's a peaceful in its own way. And yes, lava still flows nearby. You can hear it, the constant, low gurgle of movement beneath the rock, like the volcano is whispering secrets to itself. The occasional tremor rolls through the ground like distant thunder. But these dinosaurs, these walking, steam-bathing, ash-wallowing tanks, they don't flinch. They belong here. Weird fact: in 1977, a volcanic eruption in Indonesia created a spring that reached temperatures of 112 degrees Celsius, but nearby wildlife learned to navigate around it within days. Some even use the edges for warmth in the cooler evenings. You wonder if this is how it started for these dinosaurs' cautious steps. Burned toes, trial and error. Until one generation figured it out, and then the next never left. You're watching learned behavior turned into instinct. You scribble, spa memory, cultural ritual, passed down thermal habits. There's something beautiful about it in a dangerous sort of way. Then comes a low, trumpet-like sound. Not loud, not alarming, more like a polite honk. One of the adults raises its head and returns the call with a grunt. Another shifts position. You squint, it's the alpha maybe. Larger, older tail curved like a sickle. It doesn't move much, but when it does, the others seem to pay attention. It lumbers into the pool and submerges, slowly releasing a long, hissing breath. The water glows faintly around its body. You don't even try to explain that to yourself. You just sit and listen. Behind you, the geyser erupts again, this time longer, whistling a note that sounds like a flute played through a wet sock. The dinosaurs don't react. You, however, nearly jump out of your skin. You chuckle softly, then stop. Because directly across the pool, one of the dinosaurs is staring at you. No blinking, just a steady gaze like it's trying to decide whether you're real. You wave awkwardly. It snorts, sprays a fine mist into the air, and looks away. You're starting to wonder if you're the strange creature in this ecosystem. You've figured it out. The reason these dinosaurs never left this death trap of a volcano isn't just the heat or the food or the geothermal ash baths. It's the lack of competition. You sit perched on a ledge overlooking a rockslide channel, watching as a half-grown dinosaur ambles across the baked stone tail, swaying snout down, utterly relaxed. There's no tension in its movements, no alert posture, no watching the shadows. Because nothing hunts here. And honestly, who would? Even you, wearing boots rated for jungle expeditions and a borrowed heat-shielding jacket from the last research station you passed, are dangerously close to evaporating. Your water's gone warm. Your shirt is doing its best impression of soup. And your left boot squeaks when you walk, which shouldn't matter, but it really does in a place where stepping into the wrong puddle might melt your toenails. So yeah, it makes sense that predators steer clear. You stand stretching sore limbs and follow a curved basalt path worn smooth by centuries of dinosaur feet. The heat here is different, drier, sharper. The air feels thinner, and your breath scrapes against the inside of your throat like sandpaper. Then you see them. At least 6 herbivorous dinosaurs, 2 large. The rest smaller, gathered near a pile of scorched bark. They're munching like a picnic is in progress. One of them lifts its head and lets out a wheezy sound that might be laughter or indigestion. You can't tell, but there's no urgency, no flinching, no scanning the ridgelines. There are no carnivores here. That's not normal. Even the most peaceful ecosystems have predators. Something to keep numbers in check. But this place has one boss, the volcano, and it eats indiscriminately. Fire doesn't care what your diet is. Some paleobiologists have argued that volcanic environments acted as natural predator deterrents. Historians still debate whether herbivores intentionally settled in these zones or were pushed there by necessity. But if this group is any clue, they weren't exiled, they chose this. Back near the slope, you notice claw marks etched into the stone. Not scratches, scrapes, long dragging grooves. Maybe from a predator trying to follow. They stop abruptly right at the edge of a hardened lava shelf, like someone tried to chase and then realized, nope. You imagine the scene. A young carnivore, ambitious, hungry, stalking a volcanic herbivore into the misty rim of an active crater. The air thickens. The rocks hiss beneath its paws. The heat presses in like a closing fist. It takes one more step, then turns and bolts. Probably didn't even get a bite before its lungs started to cook. You inch forward, gaze sweeping the blackened valley below. There are no nests of torn feathers, no scattered bones. Just ash plants, pools, and the sound of slow chewing. A young dinosaur nearby lets out a burp and immediately looks embarrassed. You try not to laugh. It snorts, shakes its head, and goes back to grazing. It's all very calm, too calm. And that's when you notice something disturbing. There used to be predators here. Half buried in a mound of cooled slag, you spotted a row of teeth. Long, curved, serrated. Not from one of your herbivores. You dig around, careful not to burn your hands, and reveal a partial skull. It's warped, fractured, and half-melted, but the shape is unmistakable, some kind of theropod. And it died here. You glance up at the dinosaurs, still grazing like nothing's wrong. Did they lure it here? No too complicated. But maybe they learned, over generations, that predators never made it back out of the smoke. That staying close to the volcano kept them safe. Odd fact, certain bird species today, like brush turkeys, intentionally nest near geothermal zones to incubate their eggs. The heat does the work. And predators, they don't like hot dirt. You make a note, heat is habitat defense. Not a wall, a moat. As you rise, a rumble rolls through the ground, deep and slow like the earth clearing its throat. You freeze. So do the dinosaurs. Then, one by one, they relax. Apparently, that's just a small one. You, on the other hand, need a new shirt. Nearby, a juvenile waddles toward a mineral spring and sticks its entire snout into the bubbling water. Steam curls up its face, fogging its vision, but it doesn't care. It drinks, slowly, then sways over to a soft patch of moss and plops down with a grunt. You sit beside it, both of you silently agreeing to pretend you're not sweating out your souls. And in that moment, you get it. You really do. These creatures didn't retreat here in fear. They moved into the volcano like it was beachfront property. Because predators hate steam. Because most animals can't eat lava. Because when the world burns, sometimes the safest place is right in the fire. You write one final line in your notes. They weren't hiding. They were thriving. You didn't think you'd be talking about ferns today. But here you are, sitting on a slope of half-melted stone, watching a dinosaur delicately nibble at a patch of bright green fronds that somehow sprouted from a crack where lava once poured like syrup. The thing about ferns is they love chaos. Not literally, but close. When a volcano erupts, it doesn't just destroy. It resets. The ash layers, the heat sterilizes, the old life is scraped off the planet like burnt toast. But then, weirdly, that blank slate becomes the perfect bed for something new. And almost every time, ferns are first. You crouch down, brushing away some warm grit, and spot the tiny curling fingers of dicrodium-like plants, primitive, resilient, green, in defiance of everything around them. And the dinosaurs know it. You watch one reach in with its stubby beak and snip a stem like it's picking out its favorite salad leaf. Scientists today call it successional bloom, the pattern of pioneer species colonizing damaged landscapes. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs actively followed these blooms after eruptions like ash-chasing herbivores. But if these plant eaters are any clue, they didn't just follow the blooms. They settled on top of them. A larger adult thunders past you, not running, just in a hurry to breakfast. Its feet squash a patch of moss that hisses in protest. You flinch, but the dinosaur doesn't look back. It's heading straight for a lava terrace. And you realize what's happening. That's not a rock slide, that's a garden. You hurry after it, climbing a slope streaked with old burn marks and bright red lichen. When you crest the ridge, you see them. Dozens of green islands, tiny fern gardens perched on lava shelves, each with a dinosaur standing over it like a proud farmer. They're not just eating the ferns, they're protecting them. The distribution is odd, too spaced out to be random. You count 5 distinct plots, each no more than 15 feet wide, glowing faintly from underneath. The warmth is perfect, not hot enough to scorch the roots, not cool enough for frost to ever reach. It's like a prehistoric greenhouse system run by molten plumbing. You sit amazed. They have learned to use the volcano's aftershocks as agriculture. The ash brings nutrients. The heat keeps pests away. The lava flows crack open new ground, and within weeks, ferns, edible ones, soft, easy to digest, full of minerals. One dinosaur circles a new patch, grunting softly. It tests the soil with its foot. Not stomping, just pressing. You think you see steam rise. It huffs, moves on. That one's not ready. They're farming with fire. It's not farming the way we define it. There's no planting, no tending, but there's intention, awareness, a memory passed through behavior. Maybe this species learned to recognize volcanic rhythms, eruption, ashfall, regrowth. Maybe the mothers led their young to fresh flows. Maybe they learned to wait by the cracks. And maybe that's why they never left. You sit beside a garden patch staring at the spiraling fiddleheads of fresh ferns and the half-eaten stumps left by the morning's diners. They've grazed without killing the plant, only the tender parts. The roots are untouched. The next eruption will bury it again, and still it will return. Odd historical aside, after Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, ferns were among the first plants to recolonize the scorched landscape. In some cases, they sprouted within days. No seeds, just spores and sheer, furious optimism. You look around at the steaming, fern-dotted slopes and wonder how many of these plants have lived and died a dozen times since the last big blow. And the dinosaurs, they're just waiting for the next green wave. One of the juveniles trots past you carrying a mouthful of fronds, trailing a little stem like a child dragging a blanket. It stops beside a pool and begins methodically soaking the leaves before eating. Like tea. Fern tea. You scribble in your notes. Ferns soaked before ingestion. Digestion aid. Flavor. Ritual. Fancy dinosaur tea party. Then, just for fun, you whisper to yourself, they invented salad dressing. Behind you, another geyser lets out a short, annoyed burst. You duck instinctively. The dinosaurs don't flinch. They know the pattern. You take a slow walk through the lava terraces, watching the ferns sway gently in the convection wind. The green is unnaturally vivid against the gray. Life here doesn't overcome death. It walks with it, chews beside it, waits for the lava to cool and says, okay, my turn. You pause at the edge of a high shelf and peer down into the volcanic valley below. A fresh flow still glows along the edges, slow like honey made of stars. Already a few black specks dot the cooling rock. Spores, seeds, wind riders, life sending scouts into the fire. And you know within weeks ferns will rise there too. The dinosaurs will follow. They always do. You step into the caldera like you're stepping onto another planet. The walls curve high above you, layered in ash and time. Fissures run like veins through the stone, glowing faintly in shades of orange and crimson. The light isn't sunlight, it's reflected fire bouncing off sulfur-stained rock and smoky pools, painting the entire world in shades of molten bronze. This is the heart of the volcano. And yes, somehow there are dinosaurs living in it. You've been following the herd up the slope for hours. At first, it was a slow climb past vent steam and charred tunnels. But then the terrain widened and flattened, and now you're here standing at the rim of a landscape that looks like it was designed by a very moody god. Down below in a basin of fractured basalt, a group of dinosaurs mill around like shoppers in an open-air market. No roofs, no fences, just a loose cluster of plant eaters chewing quietly, while lava pulses behind them like the breath of a sleeping dragon. You move closer, carefully skirting the edge of a rock slide. The air is thin up here, almost high altitude-like but infused with the scent of wet stone, hot minerals, and something else cinnamon. You're not hallucinating. The heat makes certain plant oils more volatile. Some ferns and ancient horsetails give off spice-like scents when scorched. It's like nature's trying to keep things interesting before your lungs give out. The dinosaurs don't care. They shuffle through the haze, stopping to sniff steaming piles of sediment or to nibble on mossy edges of fumaroles. One even lies right next to a bubbling crack, its tail resting a few dangerous inches from semi-liquid stone. And it's asleep. How does that not end in barbecue? You crouch beside a slope overlooking the basin and take it in. This is no accident. The layout down here works wide enough for the herd to move elevated ridges to escape lava surges, mineral springs tucked into corners for drinking, and ferns growing in little heat-shielded pockets. It's practically a fortress, and predators. Not a single sign. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs ever truly colonized calderas. Fossil records are unsurprisingly lacking when the ground tends to melt your bones. But some suggest that certain herbivores adapted to thermally volatile zones, using their extreme conditions as defense. You can't prove it, but looking around now, it's hard to argue. Above a flock of primitive birds, small crow-sized sleek cuts across the sulfur haze, letting out metallic chirps that sound more like a warning system than song. They circle once, then disappear into the mist. The dinosaurs barely react, but you get the message. The volcano is still alive, and it's watching. You move closer to the center of the caldera. The heat's heavier here, clinging to your clothes, pressing on your skin. You keep to the shadows of large boulders, ducking past vents that hiss like angry kettles. One even sprays your arm with mist hot enough to sting, not enough to scald. You yelp anyway. A dinosaur 20 feet away lifts its head, stares at you for a beat, then goes back to chewing. You're starting to realize something. These animals are attuned to this volcano the way sailors once read the wind. They know it every vibration, every temperature shift, every breath. When the mountain stirs, they respond. One steps into a shallow depression near the center and stomps twice. Dust puffs out. The others begin to shift slowly, gathering toward the depression. Then they stop and lower their heads. What is this? Some kind of meeting. A heat check, a communal nap. The dinosaur that stomps circles the depression and nudges a flat stone with its snout. Beneath it, steam trickles up in a slow ribbon. It steps back and one of the juveniles cautiously approaches, leans in and lowers its feet into the vent. A foot bath. You shake your head, whispering, "No way!" But it makes sense. The crater is their spa, their kitchen, their nursery, their last defense. And here in its smoldering belly, they've built a home. You hear a sound behind you, dry stones shifting and whirl around. Nothing, just wind. But you feel it now, the faint thrum in the floor. The rhythm's changing. The volcano is getting restless. The dinosaurs sense it too. One by one, they begin to move not in panic, but in calm, practiced motion. They flow toward the caldera's edges like water spilling uphill. You follow, careful not to rush. They've done this before. That's the real shock. This isn't rare. This is normal. The volcano rumbles again, a low groan that makes your teeth chatter. Steam jets from a vent nearby. You flinch. The dinosaurs do not. One even pauses to scoop up a mouthful of ash-dusted leaves before moving on. Odd fact, certain volcanic gases like carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide can lull animals into a drowsy state in small doses. Maybe that's part of the calm. Maybe these dinosaurs are just slightly buzzed all the time. You reach the ridge and turn back. Down in the caldera, a thin spurt of lava has begun bubbling from a low crack, slow, syrupy, almost playful. But you know how fast that can change. Still, no one runs. They just disappear, one by one through cracks into tunnels behind smoke. And suddenly the crater is empty. You stare at the spot where they stood minutes ago. The same wind moves across the ferns. The same red light spills through the haze, but they're gone. Like the mountain swallowed them whole. You whisper to yourself, this isn't a habitat, it's a routine. Then the ground shifts again. Time to follow. You don't know where you're going. You're just following glowing footprints. Literally prints. Each one pressed into the warm rock darkened slightly around the edges, as if the creature that made it radiated enough heat to leave a scorched shadow. The tunnel ahead curves downward, and the farther you go, the quieter everything gets. No steam hisses, no distant groans, just the steady drip of condensation and your own slightly panicked breath. Then you smell it sulfur and wet stone. And something else, something earthy. You round a bend and stop dead in your tracks. This isn't just a tunnel, it's a nursery. Dozens of shallow, circular nests are carved into the floor, each one lined with ash moss or broken mineral flakes. Most are empty, a few cradle-leg fragments, some no larger than your fist. Others as wide as dinner plates cracked open like dragon fruit. And yes, nestled near the far wall beneath a warm gas vent, you see them hatchlings. Tiny, wobbly, alive. One lifts its head, a stubby little beak pokes through a fluff of soot-covered down. It chirps softly, and another chirps back. The noise echoes through the chamber like wind chimes in a cave. You crouch, careful not to slip. The floor's uneven here, coated in a kind of mineral-rich mud that squelches under your boots. You lean forward and watch, and the young ones are resting close to geothermal vents. Their breathing is slow, rhythmic, as if the heat lulls them into sleep cycles. You think back to modern reptilian behavior, how some species lay eggs in warm soil, letting ambient temperature incubate them without supervision. But here, the heat isn't just passive, it's curated. You shift your gaze upward and spot carefully placed stones forming a low barrier around some nests. Not natural formations, not random. These were placed with purpose. That shouldn't be possible. You whisper, "You've got to be kidding me." Scientists today debate whether any dinosaurs exhibited nesting behaviors beyond guarding and brooding, but there's no modern analog for thermal structuring, the deliberate use of geothermal heat to control nest temperature. Until now, you glance toward this entrance. A large adult stands motionless, half-shadowed by the tunnel wall. It doesn't move, just watches. Guard duty. You swallow hard and step around the edge of the chamber. The juveniles don't startle. One lifts its head, sneezes, and flops onto its side again. They trust the heat. They trust the stone. You watch as a nearby vent hisses a low plume of steam. A hatchling stirs. It scoots a few inches closer to the source, curls up and stills again. It's adjusting for temperature. You start sketching like a maniac. You're not even sure what you're writing anymore, just fragments. Geothermal learning. Hatchling migration. Thermal drift as instinct. You sit for a moment, soaking in the surreal warmth. Around you, the walls flicker with red-orange light from somewhere deeper. Above, the ceiling is coated with soot that seems to shimmer like mica. Then you hear it, a rumble, not from the volcano, but from inside the tunnel. A deep, throaty trill. The adult responds with a shorter huff like an answer. Then one by one, the hatchlings begin to chirp. Not in panic, not in confusion, in anticipation. The ground shifts slightly. The thermal vents pulse hotter, and that's when you realize what's happening. They're preparing. The volcano's about to blow again. You stand, breath caught somewhere between awe and dread. The adult makes no move to evacuate. It just lowers its head and waits. You turn backing toward the entrance but pause. Another dinosaur steps in. Not the same one from before. This one's broader with missing plates along its spine and one eye clouded. Old. It snorts once, then moves to the hatchlings. Gently, it nudges them into tighter clusters, using its snout to rearrange bedding, scooping in fresh ash from the floor. It's tending them, not panicking, not fleeing, preparing. Odd fact, some bird species today adjust their nest before storms, padding, extra tucking in chicks, facing openings away from prevailing winds. Historians still debate whether dinosaur care extended beyond guarding. But if you ask this elder dinosaur, it'd probably just blink at you and keep tucking in babies. You back farther into the tunnel out of the nursery and into a higher corridor. You can still hear the chirps echoing behind you now, softer like lullabies. And then up ahead the light flares orange. You climb fast. The temperature spikes. Somewhere behind you steam jets through the tunnel like a siren call. But the air isn't panicked. It's ancient, rhythmic. You emerge at the edge of a mid-level shelf overlooking the caldera. It's changed. Lava now trickles in streams between the rocks like veins of liquid gold. The herd is in motion again, but not escaping. They're funneling toward high-ground vents, assembling in circles. You realize they've done this before. This is the plan. Babies underground. Adults on watch, no chaos. You catch sight of the fireproof-footed dinosaur. Again, its legs streaked with ash. Its tail curled in a slow sweep as it corrals a hesitant juvenile toward one of the warmest ridges. Then the volcano growls. Not roars, growls. And as the world begins to rumble, you realize they don't run from eruptions. They live through them. You don't remember falling, but you remember landing. Somewhere between the second tremor and the hiss of a collapsing vent, your footing vanished, and the world tilted sideways. Now, you're lying flat on your back in a patch of sticky ash, blinking up at a sky that's not really a sky, just layers of smoke smeared across a glowing ceiling. Everything smells like lightning and burnt coins. And then you hear the rhythmic scraping sound of claws on stone. Not fast, not desperate, steady. You lift your head, wincing. The fireproof-footed dinosaur, the same one from before, is climbing its legs, moving with deliberate force, tail swaying like a counterbalance. Behind it, two smaller dinosaurs stumble, almost skating on the sloped rock. The adult circles back, not a sound, just movement. It plants itself behind the little ones and nudges them up with its chest. They move forward. Then another quake hits, stronger this time. The shelf where you landed jolts. A crack splits beside you, steam pouring out with a shriek. You scramble back just as the rock gives way, sliding into a fresh scar that glows red beneath. From the ledge above the fireproof, one stares down at you. For a moment, no one moves. Then it shifts, slowly, carefully. It circles down toward you in wide arcing steps, choosing cooler stones, tracing a path like it's done this before. When it reaches your level, it doesn't touch you. It just waits. You push yourself up shakily. Your knee screams. There's a gash along your leg that looks worse than it feels, but you're mobile. For now. The dinosaur turns, glances once over its shoulder, and starts walking. You follow, not because it asked, but because there's nowhere else to go. The path it takes winds through a half-collapsed tunnel, heat fog rolling through like ghost smoke. You hear the echo of low rumbles behind you, rock falls, lava splashes, something bigger, but ahead, silence. The dinosaur leads you into a pocket chamber you somehow missed before. You recognize it by scent, first sharp and mineral-rich. Then the light changes. It's brighter in here. The far wall has collapsed, revealing a window into the volcano's throat. Lava moves beyond it, not in rivers, but in slow-motion waves, churning under a crust like the surface of a breathing sun. And the herd is here. You see them, clusters of adult dinosaurs positioned in arcs around a ridge that rises like a stage above the fire. The juveniles are nestled between them, sheltered by bulk and stone. Their eyes flick between glowing vents and shifting lava trails. But none of them panic. None of them move. This isn't chaos. This is choreography. And the fireproof-footed one, it's walking directly toward the highest point. A heat plume blasts from below. You flinch. It doesn't. It stands firm, raises one leg, then the other, placing its feet into shallow, cracked impressions already worn into the rock. Same ones from earlier. This is the same spot. The pose, the stance, the stillness. You get chills not from cold, obviously, but from realization. This is ritual. It's not meditation, it's memory. They've done this before. Maybe every time the volcano shakes, maybe every time it threatens to drown the world again. They gather, they balance, they remember. And then you see it. The smallest of them all. A juvenile barely up to your chest, wobbling toward the edge of the heat shelf. The ground shakes again. It stumbles. Without hesitation, the adult steps down, blocking it. No sound, just presence. It nudges the little one back, then returns to its post. A sacrifice. A guide. You don't know, but this dinosaur, this fireproof-footed, smoke-eyed, ash-armored tank, it is the reason the herd still breathes. The lava surges again higher this time. It splashes against a slope, sending a ripple of golden light across the cave. You shield your eyes, and then just as fast, it begins to recede. The volcano exhales. Steam rushes through the tunnel behind you, pushing the heat outward. The pressure eases. The walls hum quieter. The roar softens to a low hiss. It's over, for now. The herd doesn't move immediately. They wait. One more beat. Two. Then a grunt. A long, low exhale. The fireproof one steps down, and the others begin to follow. You stand there shaking, watching them walk not away from the danger, but through it. Not fast. Not in fear. Just forward. Because that's how they've survived. Odd fact: in 2015, scientists discovered pine trees in the Canary Islands that evolved bark so thick and fire-resistant they could survive lava flows. Not avoid. Survive. Maybe these dinosaurs had the same idea. Historians still debate whether ancient animals could recognize eruption patterns or simply reacted instinctively. But this wasn't instinct. This was memory etched in feet and stone. A generational rhythm. And today, they danced it again. You wake up the next morning to silence. Not real silence, because this is still a volcano, and the earth here never truly shuts up, but a kind of peaceful silence. The kind that comes after something loud, after something violent. The kind that says you're still here, somehow. The ground is warm beneath you, but no longer pulsing. The smoke's thinner, the light gentler. You sit up, brush off a coat of ash from your jacket, and squint down the slope. The dinosaurs are still here. They're grazing again, moving through the half-buried ferns that have already started to uncoil after yesterday's drama. It's bizarre how quickly the ecosystem resets, as if the eruption was just a rude interruption, a passing mood. You climb slowly to your feet, muscles aching, but your curiosity stronger than your bruises. And you follow the herd as they begin migrating not away from the volcano, but around it. A circular path familiar, well-worn. And here's the odd part. They're not heading for cooler ground or safer ridges. They're climbing another slope, one that from a distance seems to lead straight into the volcanic mist again. Seriously, you mutter aloud. You just survived an eruption and you're going back in, but they are. The trail arcs around a sharp ridge where the lava once flowed freely. You follow, slipping occasionally on the warm gravel. And as you crest the edge, what you see makes your already sore brain hurt in the best way. Another volcano, not an exact mirror of the one you just escaped, but close. Smaller, older. Its caldera long since hardened, no current eruptions. But the rock is still warm. Steam drifts from cracks like whispers, and at its center, more ferns. Another herd. They're smaller, this second group. Similar features, same armored feet, same soot-crusted flanks. But the way they move is slightly different. Their grazing pattern is slower, their head gestures more subtle. And then it clicks. These are the cousins. You're watching two herds of the same species separated by terrain, maybe generations, but still bound by the rhythm of volcanoes. One active, one dormant, and the dinosaurs move between them like old relatives dropping by for tea. You exhale slowly. They never left the mountain because they didn't have to. They just moved from heat source to heat source generation after generation. Never migrating in the usual sense, never crossing oceans or deserts. They stayed here, within firelight, within the lungs of the earth. There's a wide ledge nearby. You sit on it, arms resting on your knees, watching as the two herds begin to merge. Cautiously at first, a few snorts, a stomp or two. One adult gets shoved aside and lets out an indignant wheeze. But then, calm. Within minutes, they're sharing the ferns, shoulder to shoulder, tails swaying. One even sneezes directly into another's flank, which causes a short shuffle of tail slaps, and then everything resets. Scientists still debate whether herbivorous dinosaurs moved in multi-group networks or isolated herds. Fossil evidence is spotty. Migration patterns are murky at best, but what you're seeing now isn't just a social visit. It's a handoff. The active herd begins to rest. The newcomers begin to graze, like a relay race, between volcanoes. And your friend, the fireproof-footed one, is still in charge. You watch it slowly ascend a higher ridge overlooking both groups. It stops at the peak and simply stands, not posturing, not dominating, just watching. Its tail shifts once, and the others adjust. You remember something odd you read in a paper once, that some dinosaur species may have communicated through tail positioning. Not full gestures, just angle and tension. Like a semaphore system written in body language. You wonder if you're seeing it right now. You squint. Try to decode it. Tail curve, oh, stay here. Tail twitch, is, those are guests. Tail flick, if they eat our ferns, let them. Probably. You chuckle, shaking your head. You're way smarter than you look. It turns and looks directly at you. You freeze, half expecting it to march over and demand to know your qualifications. But it just blinks once, slowly, then turns back to the herd. Okay then. You take one last look at the two groups now moving as one slowly descending toward a lower basin you hadn't noticed before. More steam, more greenery, more fire-fed soil. They'll eat, rest, wait for the next tremor. They always do. Odd fact, in regions like Iceland and Ethiopia, human settlements have existed for centuries near active volcanoes. Why? Because the land is rich. The water is warm and the threats are predictable. It's dangerous, but it's home. That's what this is. Not a trap, not a fluke, not exile, just home. For creatures that never needed to leave. The trail between volcanoes doesn't look like much, just a scorched ribbon of cracked stone winding through the highlands like a burnt shoelace. No signs, no markers, no polite warnings that say, caution, molten rock may occur. Just miles of mineral heat, sulfur gusts, and one clear message carved into every pebble. Only the bold pass through here. And yet, the dinosaurs walk it like it's a shortcut to Grandma's house. You follow from a respectful distance, boots crunching softly over black gravel. The path bends around cliffs and hugs the inside of an ancient lava trench, now cooled into jagged ridges. Steam still rises from random cracks like the ground forgot it was supposed to be asleep. But your companions don't blink. They walk. One herd becomes a long line tail to snout like a slow-moving parade of armored botanists. The air grows thinner the farther you go, not colder, just emptier. Each breath tastes like coins left out in the sun. You swig what little water you have left, knowing it's warming up again in your pack even as you sip. But the dinosaurs seem unfazed. They pause only once at the midpoint between the two volcanoes, at a place that might have once been a basin, now a shallow crater filled with sulfur-stained mist and a few lonely fern stalks clinging to life like overachievers at a school science fair. And here's the wild part: they wait. All of them. No grazing, no moving, just stillness. You crouch behind a sloped outcrop and watch heart tapping gently against your ribs. The fireproof-footed dinosaur, always near the center, takes a step forward, then plants its feet wide like a stamp. It exhales. One deep gust, then it lowers its head, slowly. The others begin to do the same. It's a moment of silence, or memory. Historians still debate whether certain dinosaur species performed communal behaviors in response to geological landmarks. Some paleontologists believe migration wasn't just about food, but also about returning to familiar places during certain phases of the Earth's cycle. And this is familiar. A juvenile near the back lets out a squeaky cough, breaks formation, and quickly scampers back in line when a nearby elder sways its tail in a no-nonsense arc. This isn't rest. This is ritual. Then, after what feels like 3 full minutes, they begin walking again. You follow a little slower now. respectful, like you just wandered into someone's ancient family tradition and tried not to step on the sacred carpet. The land begins to shift gently, sloping downward, cooling as you approach the second volcano's base. It's older, quieter. The rock here is layered in sediment from ages past with stripes of ash and crystal that sparkle faintly under the haze-filtered sun. You spot signs of habitation. Not nests exactly, but rests places where tails have left grooves, where feet have packed the ash flat, where steam vents have been shaped by years of dinosaur weight. This isn't just a second volcano, it's a second home, and the two herds know it. There's no scuffling for position, no chest thumping, no territorial drama, just a quiet acknowledgement, a few nods or what passes for nods when your neck weighs 50 pounds, and then the slow process of resettling. Some begin to graze. Others lie down, pressing their bellies to the warm stone. A few roll lazily in a thin layer of ash near the base of a dormant vent. And then something unexpected. From the far end of the new crater, another dinosaur approaches. It's older, scarred, lopsided. One eye white, one leg dragging slightly, but it walks with purpose. Behind it trail two young ones, maybe a different lineage, maybe the same bloodline from another tunnel system. You don't know, but the reaction is clear. The fireproof-footed one steps forward and meets the elder halfway. No sound, no roaring, no trumpet. They touch heads. A simple gesture. Then the elder turns away and leads its pair of hatchlings to a shallow basin on the side of the crater. You blink. You weren't expecting diplomacy. But here it is. This species doesn't just travel between volcanoes. It connects them, maintains memory, transfers knowledge, hands off generations. Odd fact, some elephants are known to migrate between waterholes hundreds of miles apart using trails passed down for centuries. They mourn, they remember, they revisit places where others died. You wonder if this trail between volcanoes is the dinosaur equivalent of that. A road of memory, a connection between fire-blooded families. You take out your notebook and scribble, 2 volcanoes, 1 species, no borders, only rhythms. The wind shifts again, bringing with it the unmistakable scent of warm stone and growing ferns. Somewhere deep below the volcano still breathes. But for now, peace. And the dinosaurs settle in. You wake to laughter. Not human laughter, nothing that familiar, but a deep rolling rhythm that sounds like 2 boulders chuckling into a canyon. You sit up fast, heart thudding, only to see a juvenile dinosaur trying to climb over an adult's tail and absolutely failing. It tumbles backward in slow motion, lands in a pile of ash, and shakes itself like a soggy dog. The adult glances back, emits that strange, vibrating grunt. Again, half amusement, half low-frequency scolding, and the juvenile snorts like it's heard it all before. You're witnessing something rare. Social behavior. Not herding, not following a leader. Actual interaction. The kind that says, we know each other. We know how to live together. You creep a little closer and take a seat behind a low obsidian boulder still radiating last night's warmth. The crater below you looks transformed now. Morning mist has peeled away, revealing dinosaurs sprawled across the landscape like sunbathers after a storm. Some stretch their limbs. Others dig shallow nests with scooping motions of their tails. But the sound that draws your attention is unmistakable low thunder rhythmic. You scan for it, and then you see them. Near the central vent, 2 of the larger adults face each other. Still heads lowered slightly, tails lifted just above the ground. The sound is coming from their throats, slow subsonic rumbles that tremble through the ground more than the air. You feel it in your sternum, and then tap. One flicks its tail gently against the other's flank. Not hard. A touch. The second responds. Tap, tap, tap. You whisper, is this a conversation? Historians still debate whether dinosaurs used low-frequency sound to communicate over long distances like elephants do today. But visual signaling like tail flicks and posture, that's even murkier. Still, what you're seeing here doesn't look random. It's coded. Around them, smaller dinosaurs begin to gather, forming a loose crescent. One juvenile tries to mimic the tapping, slapping its own tail against a rock. The others ignore it like siblings ignoring their youngest at a family gathering. The adults keep their rhythm slow, deliberate, as if the mountain itself is keeping beat. And the volcano. It listens. There's no eruption, no warning rumbles, just soft hisses of steam, the occasional crack of cooling rock, and the synchronized thuds of tails communicating beneath a sulfur-stained sky. Odd fact, there are birds today, like the capercaillie, that drum with their bodies as part of their mating ritual. Not vocal, physical. Maybe these dinosaurs inherited something older, deeper. You make a note. Tail taps equal herd coordination. Heat warning. Group decisions. Or maybe it's just a prehistoric morning meeting. Soon the rhythm slows and stops. One adult snorts loudly and walks away. Meeting adjourned. The rest begin to move. You follow as they file into a narrow corridor of basalt, rising like walls on both sides. A shortcut between venting ridges. The light dims again, and the heat surges, concentrated here, funneled through the natural canyon. And yet they keep talking. No roars, just pulses. A foot stomp, a tail flick, a throat hiss like a boiling kettle. They choreograph their way forward. You glance upward where faint light filters in from a cracked ceiling and realize something wild. The sound echoes up, not just out. It's being funneled like a natural amplifier. You scribble furiously. Sound tunnels, volcano acoustics, communication engineering. You nearly walk straight into a sleeping dinosaur curled up just beyond the corridor. It opens one eye, glares like you interrupted its dreams of ferns, then closes it again. You shuffle past and step out into a broad shelf of warm stone overlooking a fresh fern bloom. The herd spreads out here, each group peeling off to familiar territory like commuters splitting at a roundabout. And the fireproof footed dinosaur, it stands alone on a rise tail, low head angled toward the horizon. Listening, you follow its gaze. Beyond the rim of the crater, the sky shimmers, slightly heat distortion dancing with rising ash. But there's something else. A distant sound. Not thunder, not eruption. A call, low, repeating, familiar. You look to the dinosaur, half expecting it to ignore it. Instead, it turns slowly, taps its tail 3 times against the ground. And the herd moves. One by one, they begin to rise, stretch, and orient toward the sound. Another herd is calling. From the first volcano. This isn't just communication. It's coordination. You realize with sudden clarity that you're watching not just survivors but planners. That these dinosaurs don't just live near volcanoes. They use them. They know when to rest, when to move, when to split, when to return. And they signal that rhythm through tails and thunder and the kind of sound you feel more than hear. Like now, as the herd begins its return migration back to the active crater. Because the dance isn't finished. It never really is. You hike alone now. The herd has moved ahead in loose formation, vanishing into a low gorge that exhales steam with every shift in the wind. You lag behind not because you're tired, although yes, you absolutely are, but because you've come across something strange. A boulder, charred black, cracked open like a roasted chestnut. And inside, nothing. No bones, no feathers, just ash, perfectly contained. You step closer, brush the edge. The rock flakes away with a sound like brittle paper, revealing something unusual beneath a smear of white. Not paint, not mineral. It's bone, but not fossilized. Too fresh. You crouch, gently chip away a few more flakes, uncovering a partial jawbone, a curved tooth, and one fragile hollow rib. It's the remnants of something that tried to live here and failed. You glance around. This boulder, it's not a rock. It's a tomb. The earth rolled over it, melted it, sealed it inside. And that's when it hits you. This is why you've never seen fossils from these dinosaurs. They don't leave any. The volcano eats everything. The heat here is too intense. The soil never stays still. Ash layers bury, burn compact. Lava floods erase entire lifetimes in a single night. Even bones that do survive are warped, twisted, dissolved by sulfur and pressure. There's no sedimentary grace here. No soft burial, just fire and forget. Historians still debate why so few fossilized remains have been found in volcanic strata. Some argue that it's because most life avoided such extreme habitats. Others think the fossils were there once but were vaporized before anyone ever had a chance to dig. But what if the evidence isn't missing? What if it was never meant to last? You rise, brush the ash from your palms, and look around with new eyes. How many lives lived and ended in this valley? How many herds passed through, leaving behind nothing but footprints that hardened, then cracked, then disappeared? You turn slowly, scanning the landscape. There on the far ridge, a faint pattern in the rock. Not a trail exactly, more like a groove. Parallel arcs evenly spaced, curving down the slope like ribs pressed into a soft bed. Footprints, ancient ones, too faded to map, too scattered to measure, but they're there. Ghost paths. You find another closer this time. One shallow depression, 4 toes, wide, heavy. You place your foot beside it. It dwarfs you, and you whisper to the air, "Who were you?" No one answers, but the silence feels full. The volcano groans softly, a long exhale that sends curls of steam swirling across the ground. You shiver, not from cold, but from that uneasy sense that you're being watched not by a creature but by the past. Because here's the thing: most dinosaurs leave behind fossils, museums, labels, Latin names on neat little plaques. But this species, it leaves behind nothing. No skeletons. No skeletons, no nests, no bones carefully unearthed by graduate students on their 7th cup of coffee. Just scorched grooves and stories. You walk on, catching up with the herd as they reach a familiar basalt bridge. One of the juveniles stumbles. The fireproof-footed adult leans in, nudges it gently, and waits for it to regain balance. Then they continue. You watch their feet move across the ground. The way they avoid certain patches. The way they pause before stepping onto warm stone. They remember where the rock is thin, where the fire sleeps just beneath. They carry that memory in their bodies. And when they die, the mountain takes them, ashes to lava. Odd fact, the 79 CE eruption of Mount Vesuvius didn't just preserve people, it erased many others entirely. Some were never found. The heat was so extreme that even bones disintegrated. Entire households vanished without a trace. It wasn't destruction. It was erasure. You pause near the rim of the crater, feeling the heat rise around your ankles. Somewhere beneath your feet are thousands of years of dinosaurs' herds that walked the same trails, fed from the same ferns, drank from the same steaming pools. Gone. Not forgotten. Just absorbed. You sit quietly on a stone, now warm but no longer scalding, and pull out your notebook. Your hands are dusty, your pen nearly dry. But you write anyway. They survived in a place that remembers nothing. And maybe that's why they lived so long. Because there's a strange freedom in having no grave. You don't wait to be discovered. You just walk forward and let the mountain decide what stays behind. Evening in the crater feels like a trick. The light doesn't fade in a normal way. It shifts, bleeds into orange steam, then slowly drains into a soot-colored haze where you can't quite tell whether the sky's darkening or just sulking. The dinosaurs don't seem to care. They've returned to their routines as if yesterday's near disaster was just a particularly spicy nap. You watch one adult settle into an ash pit, its legs folding neatly beneath it like a stone bench preparing to meditate. Another noses a steaming puddle, tests it with one toe, and then after what seems like considerable thought, steps in and just stands there, eyes half-lidded. You're beginning to suspect these dinosaurs are addicted to heat, not in a desperate way. More like connoisseurs. Like people who taste wine and say vague things like, "I'm getting notes of blackberry and moonlight." You stand on the rim above them where the breeze is cooler, and thin curls of smoke drift lazily past your ears. The fireproof-footed dinosaur is just below you, perched on a ledge like it's supervising the entire herd. Again, it doesn't move much anymore. You wonder if it's tired or just old. You squint. Its body carries scars you didn't notice before, faint cracks along the tail. a split horn the way one leg favors the edge of each step. You think, this one has seen 1,000 eruptions. You sit beside it just out of reach, your breath slow and shallow. You whisper, how many years have you stood here? It doesn't answer, of course. But it doesn't leave either. Below, juveniles tumble across a wide slab of basalt, still warm from the midday sun. They leap over shallow cracks, nose each other. Trippy. Get back up. You swear one of them tries to slide on its belly and fails spectacularly. The adults tolerate this with the patience of beings who know that molten stone will discipline far better than any growl. And in that moment, something softens inside you. Because you've spent days, maybe weeks, times fuzzy down here chasing the idea that these dinosaurs are survivors of a rare adaptation, that they figured out how to live in a volcano. But now you see something different. They didn't figure it out. They are it. They don't just live in the volcano, they move like it, rest like it, breathe like it. Their rhythms are molten. Their thoughts, if they have them, are slow and heavy and certain. And maybe that's why they've lasted, because they never hurried. Odd fact, there are rocks in Hawaii that scientists say breathe, they expand and contract ever so slightly, with temperature changes shifting like lungs. Maybe this volcano is alive in the same way. And maybe the dinosaurs aren't guests. Maybe they're organs. You glance around. The ferns glow faintly now, as if moonlight has replaced lava light. But the sky's still sealed in haze. You don't know if it's dusk or dawn or some timeless in-between. The volcano hums. The herd breathes. You breathe. And you think this is the only world they've ever known. Historians still debate whether specialized dinosaurs could have outlasted broader extinction patterns by retreating into geothermal shelters, pockets of life insulated by their own heat. The idea always seemed implausible. But now you're not so sure. The dinosaurs begin to shift again, not with urgency, with ceremony. Some rise, others stretch. The fireproof-footed one lets out a single long exhale and turns its head toward the far tunnel, the one that leads back to the deeper vent systems. A few juveniles follow, and then, like mist thickening into a cloud, the herd begins to dissolve into movement. One by one they head inward. You follow at a distance through narrow lava corridors and tunnels that twist with the memory of heat. The walls glow. The air smells like minerals and breath. Occasionally, a dinosaur stops to press its snout to the stone. No chewing, no sound. Just touch. A check-in, maybe. You don't ask questions anymore. You just observe. You reach a massive chamber, rounded, smoothed, filled with steam so dense it coats your eyelashes. And at the center, stillness. The herd circles, not to sleep, not to eat, to wait. The fireproof-footed one takes its place at the center. The rest form rings around it, young on the inside, older on the outer edges. Some touch tails, some don't. And all of them stand there, silent, breathing, waiting. The volcano pulses below. You feel it. Once, every few seconds. A vibration, a hum. As if the planet is whispering something ancient in a language only lava and scaled feet can hear. You step back, give them space. You sit by the wall, pull your knees up and listen. Because whatever this is, it isn't for you. But you're lucky to witness it. The volcano breathes deeper tonight. You feel it in your ribs, in the stone beneath your palms, in the still air that somehow carries both silence and pressure. It's not roaring, not warning, just waiting. The way a sea waits before it decides to rise. You're curled on the outer edge of the chamber, your back to a wall polished smooth by generations of tail sways. The herd hasn't moved. They stand like carved statues, frozen mid-thought, arranged in their quiet orbit around the fireproof-footed one. You've never seen animals hold still this long without sleeping or grazing. This is not instinct, it's remembrance. You shift your weight quietly, not wanting to break the moment. The warmth from the walls seeps into your bones, chasing out every chill you didn't know you'd collected. Somewhere in your notebook, half buried beneath a crust of ash, are scrawled questions about herd behavior geology, the chemistry of fern regrowth. But none of it matters now, because you're watching something sacred. The fireproof-footed dinosaur lifts its head slowly. Then almost imperceptibly it exhales. The herd stirs. The outer adults begin to move, not in retreat, not in alarm. They peel off in pairs and trios, filing back through the tunnels like a tide returning to sea. A few juveniles remain huddled against the stone, blinking slowly, their breath visible in the steam. You're not sure what just happened. Maybe it was a memorial. Maybe it was rehearsal. Maybe they were listening for something that hasn't come yet. You stand legs stiff and follow the last stragglers through a narrow corridor chiseled by time and heat. The walls pulse faintly now, the glow dimmer, cooler. The volcano's gone quiet again, not asleep, just reflective. Outside, the night has arrived, or what passes for night in this ash-thick world. The stars are gone, replaced by a low haze that glows red and silver. The sky is a smear of ember and fog. You sit at the crater's edge and watch as the herd drifts across the plateau, their movements slow, almost ghost-like. And the fireproof-footed one, it pauses on a rise silhouetted against the lava glow. Its head tilts as if sniffing the past. Then it walks. One step, another, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't rejoin the herd. It doesn't look back. It moves steadily into the hottest part of the crater, the place where the steam vents scream and the rock still weeps molten light. You want to call out, but the words burn your throat. It pauses once more, just long enough for its silhouette to blur against the heat, then disappears. No roar, no final stomp, just gone. Into the ash, into the legend. You sit there for a long time trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was old. Maybe it knew the rhythm of the volcano too well. Maybe this was part of the cycle, some ancient agreement you weren't meant to understand. Odd fact, some sea turtles return to the exact same beach where they were born to lay eggs, then vanish into the waves without fanfare. No announcement, no celebration, just instinct and ocean. You think this dinosaur did the same, not to reproduce, but to return to the fire. Historians still debate whether certain species of prehistoric herbivores had migratory paths driven more by geology than climate, following the tremble of the planet, rather than the pull of the seasons. Maybe that's all this was. A long walk home. The herd continues moving across the lower slopes, now bathed in orange mist and ember light. Their shapes blur with the heat, their movements slow and quiet. You close your notebook gently. You've seen enough. You watch until the last tail fades into the haze. And even then, long after they've vanished into the night, you sit there, listening, for one more exhale, for one more step, for the whisper of feet built to carry memory across fire. So what did we learn? That sometimes survival doesn't mean escaping danger. Sometimes it means moving closer to it. These plant-eating dinosaurs didn't outpace extinction by running. They hunkered down in the last place anyone expected, the belly of the Earth's fury. They adapted not just physically with their fireproof feet and heat-tolerant hides, but emotionally, behaviorally. They learned to wait when others ran, to rest when the ground burned, to grow gardens from ash, to listen to the volcano's mood like a shepherd watches the sky. And they remembered. Through tail taps, through herd formations, through rituals performed in glowing chambers where no fossil would ever survive. They left no bones, no graves, just warmth, just memory. So the next time someone says a species vanished without a trace, remember this: maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they just lived where no one could follow, where fire takes everything and leaves only silence behind.